I am Daniel Leakes, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is award winning author and the author of several books, no other than Miss Hannah Perry.
Hi, Daniel.
Hello, Miss Hannah. As usual, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Hannah Parry, and I am the author of the book Breathing for Both of Us. I've got a copy here. Hopefully, you can see that.
Yes.
I've also written two middle grade historical thrillers. Middle grade is for kind of 9 to 12-year-olds. But Breathing for Both of Us, which we're talking about today, is an adult fiction book, and it's my latest novel.
Congratulations, Miss Hannah, for sharing your talents to the world. Thank you so much. So, what the initial step that you did for writing Breathing for Both of Us?
What the research?
So, what is all about
Sorry,
the research?
sorry, Daniel. Could you just repeat the question again?
What initial steps?
Initial steps. It was a funny one, really, because it's a medical thriller. I'd written two thrillers before, so I knew about how to write a thriller, but I was a nurse, and I actually wrote this originally. I had the character. All I had was I had the feeling of a character who was a doctor, and she's not doing very well. She's struggling with, she has an eating disorder. She was raised by an alcoholic, so she's doing this very difficult job. But she's struggling with all the baggage of her past. So I had that character, but what I had to do after that, and the outline of the book was okay, but what I had to do is I had to get a lot of I had to check, even though I was a nurse, I just had to check that I'd got the medical details correct. So I got a couple of doctor friends to read it for me and to say whether they thought it was realistic or not, and changed a few things, but it was pretty much okay. There is a lot of medical detail. That would be my only trigger warning for anybody wanting to read the book. So just to read the blurb carefully on the back, because there are some sad things that happen, and then there's some happy things that happen too. But it's not the lightest of reads.
So, Miss Hannah, how important is outlining before diving into writing the first draft of Breathing for Both of Us?
Yeah, I think outlining is really important. I don't know about you, but I really struggle with structure. It's not something that I could just write off into, just sort of follow along the characters and have a good time with it. But I know that I wouldn't have hit the important points that a good book will always have. And there's a couple of good books that you can read on structure. And I used one I really like is called The Writer's Journey, which is by a guy called Christopher Vogler, Vogler. And I also used a novel, The Screenwriter's Handbook. So that's more aimed at people writing screenplays, but that's by a guy called Jack Truby. And those, I use their outlines, and then I write the things that happen. So then I kind of know what's going to happen at the end, and I know what's happened at the beginning. The middle is always a little bit foggy, and I hope that I can pull it off. But if I've got those important points, like there's always a midpoint crisis where things are really difficult for the character, and they die a little death. That's how they phrase it. It's like a little death. It's not a real death, but it's a sort of it's the death of their beliefs normally, and then they start to work their way back up from there. So So long as I hit those beats, I'm happy.
Yes.
How
Yes,
do you do?
yes,
How
yes.
do you do it? Do you use a structure?
I'm both. I do structured, and sometimes I just write it down what uh what I'm thinking, and at the end, okay, I'll make an outline. So I do both architect and gardener.
Yeah,
If that
yeah.
makes sense.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's it, isn't it? Oh, that's such a good thing, architect and gardener. Yeah,
Yes.
and then I think everybody's stronger at one than I'm probably a better gardener than I am an architect. Does that?
Yes, you can combine both. It's
Yeah,
something that you need to practice because as I interviewed a lot of guests that they are outliner. They are far behind if they will not outline what are they talking about in their books. But some people that I interview about gardener, they just write and write and write, and at the end they will form an outline, which
yeah,
is I think good thing for a writer. You do write
yeah,
and write and write, and then at the end you got do the outlining. I think
yeah,
to
yeah,
make your book better,
yeah.
excellent in the end.
Because sometimes your subconscious can throw up things that you've never thought of. So that kind of writing by the seat of your pants thing, it can be really um, creative, actually. But I worry too much that I've missed something when I do that. But I do a bit of both. I like you. I will do a bit of both, and I think no, just like let it run now and see what happens.
Yes, run,
Yeah,
run, run, and
run.
think and think and think.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Miss,
I know some writers they'll write like 25,000 word
yeah,
outlines,
yes,
and I don't know how do you then go and write the book when you've written such a huge outline. I mean, hats off to them. I think it's amazing because they know everything that's going to happen.
yes.
But I would think I'd probably run out of steam with it. I think I'd rather be surprised.
So, Miss Hannah, for writing breathing for us, did you know already your end and the beginning of your book when you're
No,
writing it?
no, I didn't know the end. I didn't know the end. I mean, it was starting by the middle of the book, it was starting to, I was beginning to guess that the end, what it was going to be. But I was hoping against hope that it wasn't going to be that ending. But in actual fact, that was the right ending for it. I absolutely had the beginning of the book, and I sort of almost had the first third of the book pretty quickly. And the characters were, it's not until I finished that I realised how much I'd drawn on my childhood. Um, so in a way, yeah, that ending, it couldn't have sort of gone anywhere else. I think there was a surprise. There was one little surprise right at the end, which I wasn't expecting. In that uh, the I don't want to give a spoiler alert, but anyway,
Spoiler.
a spoiler. um, the main character's sister um, meets a has a sad ending, but what she doesn't know is that there is another sister, and she finds that out after she's lost that first sister. And I wasn't expecting that. And that happened right at the end. So that in that subconscious way, it suddenly just she just arrived. And I thought, oh, that's fantastic. And that actually that happened to me. So even though that happened to me, I wasn't planning to use it as a part of a book, not at all. But inevitably, these things do come out, I think.
Yes,
And that one did, if that makes sense.
yes, for sure. So, what role does research play in enhancing the authenticity of breathing for both of us?
Um, Sorry, it's really hot here today, Daniel. I don't know what your weather's like.
No
It's
worries.
about 35 degrees here. It's never hot
Oh
here.
my goodness. We're having a
Um,
wildfire in British Columbia, so it's
there,
getting
you
colder
told
now.
you've got the wildfire, haven't you?
Yes.
Is that still from the last time?
Yes, it's
That's
sad
been
to
burning
say.
and burning and burning, hasn't it?
Burning, yes.
I'm
I
so
think that's
sorry.
now the trend. Every summer we're gonna burn because of the climate change.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And it's getting hotter and hotter.
Yeah, and dry. It's the dryness, isn't it?
Hmm.
But you're safe though, where you live.
Yes, very safe. Now a
Yeah.
little bit cold and raining, so thank God we are raining
Okay,
and
that's good.
cloudy.
That's good. So you're headed into autumn now.
Yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um,
So
I'm sorry. What was the question? The
the
question was
question
the
is yes,
research.
the research process for
Yeah.
breathing for both of us.
Um, I was a part of. There's two timelines. The timeline that was about her and her sister when she was young takes place in the early 1990s when she's growing up. So although I obviously lived through the 1990s, I did have to go back and remind myself of music that was playing at the time. And you got to remember there's no phones, there's no internet, there's no, we functioned it was a very different world then. So I had to go back and remind myself of that. For medical research, I had to be really careful about, there's a lot in it about big pharma, the trials of medicine in big pharma, when they test it on people and how many trials it takes to get a medicine through the sort of FDA approval and stuff like that. So I had to make sure I didn't know anything about that. So I had to make sure I got that right. And then I had to make sure I got the medical details right. So those were the three big things.
So do you think breathing for both of us will be nominated for an award?
If I enter it for an award, I might get nominated. I might get one, but I haven't entered it for anything. Um, it's it's difficult to, you have to kind of enter, I think you have to enter it. There's so many books now. Actually putting your book, you have to put your book forward yourself, and I haven't really researched anything like that yet. um, but I don't know if it is, I mean, it's upmarket fiction, but I'm not sure it's the of the kind of novels that win awards. Does that make sense? It might be a little bit too commercial for an award, but that's a really good idea because I haven't even looked at what awards, and I think they you can enter them the year after you publish. So I should have a look. So I've only got until this Christmas to enter,
Yes.
if there were any. But I know there's independent book awards and things that I can have a look at.
Yes.
I'd never even thought of it. Thank you for reminding. Thank you for reminding me of it.
Looking forward for another award-winning piece, Miss Hannah. So, what
Yeah.
strategies that you do to overcoming writer's block when you're writing breathing for both of us?
Yeah, it was a tricky one actually because the first draft of it I wrote, it was called Trouble with the Living. It was a completely different book. It had a murder in it and all sorts was going on. And then um I took it apart and I completely rewrote it as this medical thriller. And what I ended up doing was I found it so difficult to let go of the first book that I'd written, even though I knew the story was good, and to get the impetus to keep going with it. I went on a writing course in London. I submitted it to a course which is part of it's called Curtis Brown Creative. It's a part of they're an agency actually, but they run creative writing courses, and I joined one of those and I did it with them over 6 months so that I could keep moving forward. And it's one of those ones where you have to turn up each week with another 3,000 words written. And that was a very good um, prodding me, making sure that I was keeping going, because I'll find any excuse not to do it. And I felt like I'd already written it, but so I had to really push myself to keep going. And so that's why I enrolled on the course. It was expensive, but it was worth it.
Very well said. Miss Hannah, very well said. But before you go on, I want to shout out my listeners in Turkey. Thank you so much, Turkey, for supporting this podcast because in Istanbul, I get 52% audience here. Trabzon, Wamenshane, and Ankara. Ankara. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And a lot of,
Beautiful.
yes, a beautiful place in the world. So thank you so much for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers, authors all over the world like Miss Hannah Perry. So, Miss Hannah, can you give us a brief overview of breathing of us?
Yes, it's about a doctor. She's a pediatrician, so she looks after children. And she has a patient who comes in very, very, very sick. And the doctor is up for an award, and she has been given medicine. It's just a steroid, which is something that helps children who are very collapsed when they come in, by the drug company to try using in a sort of slightly illegal way. So she uses it on this child, and initially the child gets much better, but then she becomes much worse. And what Gray, who's the doctor, realizes is that she's not the only child who's got worse from this drug, but the drug company are very close to being approved by the UK government. And so they want to keep all the damaged children hidden. So she takes it upon herself to find them. And that's the story, basically.
Yes. So, what are the key consideration in revising and editing the draft to improve the clarity and coherence of breathing for both of us?
I did really this book actually got an agent initially, but I'd done a huge amount of work on it before I was taken on. I don't have her as my agent anymore. It also didn't get a traditional publishing deal, but the what I have to really concentrate on is my timeline. First of all, I have to make sure that's the first thing I look at, because quite often I'll have 8 different things happening on the same day. I have to go through the whole script and look at the timeline. Especially when I was doing with a pass a line of the story that was taking place in the past. Then I look at an important thing, and I'm not very good at doing this, is looking at the consistency of my character's behavior, making sure that and this is where an editor would help you really, but making sure that she stays true to herself. So you can't have her acting in one way kind of here, and then over here she doesn't. She loves chocolate biscuits at the beginning, and then at the end she suddenly hates chocolate biscuits. You've got to kind of get that continuity correct, otherwise it's not plausible. And so I do each of those little things. I look at all the characters, make sure they're all behaving themselves. And then I'll look at the overall structure, and quite often I'll print it out and see how many pages I've got, the beats that we were talking about earlier, to make sure I've got an equal number of pages for each plot point that I want to hit. Not exactly equal, but sort of roughly the same. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I do. And then putting it all together and reading it as a whole, not just once, but twice. And also, and I'm not very good at doing this either, but my friends who write, they all say reading it aloud to themselves really helps you pick up words and sentences. Maybe sentences are too long, or words that could be different, is a very helpful thing to do as well. But
Ve-
I'm a bit lazy about that.
Very well said, Miss Hannah. Breathing for both of us, what are your expectations?
Because it's my first novel for adults, I'm just hoping that, and I've got another one coming out at Christmas, and I'm hoping that people who enjoyed this is like their first introduction to me, as it were, and people who enjoyed this will want to then go on and read other books that I've written. And it's interesting because I've been watching the sales and the KDP, which is the how we sell books through Amazon. I can see which books are being bought at which times, and it's good to see that after a big sale of Breathing for Both of Us, lots of books being sold of that or downloaded. People are going on. It looks like they are going on to read some of even the middle grade books, and I'm hoping with another adult book out that they would then want to go on and read that. But this is just my kind of introduction to the adult world, really. So I just hope people enjoy it.
Yes.
With a box of tissues.
Looking forward for more books, Miss Hannah.
Yeah. Thanks.
And before we go on, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to my upcoming episode after this interview. I'm gonna do interview Miss Elizabeth Solaro, a pastry chef producing royalty cakes in London. The same with Miss Hannah as where she lives. So please do listen. Food 101 after this interview. So, Miss Hannah, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Yes, thanks so much, Daniel. Yeah, please, if you like any kind of historical fiction, please go to Amazon and you can just Google me under my name, Hannah Parry, on Amazon.com or any of the Amazons. I also have a website which is hannahparry.com, so all one word, and you can purchase any of the books there too. So that's 2 historical fiction thrillers, which are back to back. I'm in the middle of writing the third one. And then this one, Breathing for Both of Us, is a medical thriller and it's for adults.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Hannah Perry because if you support her, more books to come. And lastly, what will be your advice for those aspiring writers out there?
I always say the same thing, and I say that you've got to read, just read and read and read. But I think if you just I know everybody has phones and everything. It's so easy now to just make little notes on your phone. If you think you have a good idea, just put it in notes. Keep on writing on your phone, in a notebook. Just write any ideas that you have and see where it takes you.
Yes. Yes. And stop procrastinating, people. Go. If you have the passion for writing, go for it. Who knows? You will be award-winning author like Miss Hannah Perry. So, Miss Hannah, thank you for your time.
Thanks. Lovely to see you, Daniel. Thank you.
Lovely to see you, Miss Hannah. And more to come, people. See you soon.